Hi, I'm Raylyn Worcester, and this is Spreading the Word. That's word with a capital W, as in the written word, the Bible, and the Word made flesh, Jesus Christ. I am about to read to you part 17 of Without Faith. When we left off, Gloria and Dylan were at Camp Savage, and they are just about to find out what persuasion entails. And in the rest of the world, the underground resistance has just received confirmation of where all of those arrested for their faith have been taken. And now plans are underway to rescue them. It's getting exciting, so be sure and hang on for the rest of Without Faith. Let's pick up where we left off. Part 17. 15 minutes later, Gloria, Dylan, 2 armed guards, and 10 Containees, randomly selected from the Quonset huts, were aboard the pontoon headed across the lake. The water was smooth as glass, the air crisp. Perfect conditions for fishing, Dylan thought, but didn't say. The Containees would not be participating in anything even remotely enjoyable, he was sure. He wouldn't want to rub it in with a careless observation. They grounded on a small island 12 minutes later. As she debarked, Gloria turned and looked at the water. She could just make out the 2 housing islands, one to her right, one to her left, each about the same distance away from the small island on which she now stood. When all the Containees were debarked, they were split up, 5 to each guard. Dylan went down a path to the right with one guard in his group. Gloria followed those going to the left. A.M. stayed with his boat. Turning to him before she left, Gloria said, "You stay here?" "Yes, ma'am. Anything beyond this shore is above my pay grade." Gloria nodded and hurried to catch up with her group. The path Gloria's group walked down ended in a clearing, which housed 2 buildings. Before entering either, the guard had each Containee open his mouth and hold out his hands. Then he arranged them in a line, and the entire group walked into the building on the left. In the center of the room sat a dentist's chair. Dental chairs automatically raise one's anxiety level, Gloria realized, but the rusty instruments on the tray next to it, illuminated by the bright light above the chair, was terrifying. That and the seat belt and straps on the arms of the chair were the stuff of nightmares. She watched as the guard removed 4 sets of handcuffs from the chain attached to his belt and cuffed the last 4 Containees in the line to a metal rod that ran waist-high along the wall. He then took the first in line, wiggling and screaming, to the chair and strapped him down. There was another strap Gloria hadn't noticed that the guard attached next, securing the Containee's head to the back of the chair. Containee secured, the guard pushed a button on the back of the chair, then walked over to the wall and stood with the Containees cuffed there. From a door at the back of the room, a man walked, in a white doctor's coat, goggles, and neoprene gloves. He walked over to the table holding the tray and pulled a small metal wheeled stool from beneath it. He grabbed 4 clamps from the tray and, sitting on the stool, leaned over the Containee and stretched his mouth open as wide as it would go with one hand, while clipping it in place with the clamps with the other. The Containee made a high-pitched gurgling noise that Gloria knew would have been a scream had it not stuck in his throat. Gloria wanted to close her eyes, to look away, but she knew she had to pretend to approve of the goings-on here. Her expression remained neutral, while everything inside her recoiled. The dentist then chose a set of rusty pliers from the tray and, without administering any anesthesia, began to pull and pry on unloosed teeth until he had pulled two by their roots. The Cantaney tried to scream during the process, but gurgled and choked on the blood and saliva that was never suctioned from his mouth, and had to try to calm himself to avoid drowning on his own bodily fluids. When the dentist finished, he exited the room through the door through which he'd entered. The guard unstrapped and led the man, whose legs didn't want to support him, to the end of the line and cuffed him to the pole. Then he took the next Cantaney in line, and the process started all over again. When the dentist came out this time, the blood that had splattered on the goggles had been cleaned off, and the blood-soaked gloves had been replaced. He still wore the same now splattered white doctor's coat. The dentist operated on the first 3 Cantaneys in line, then disappeared behind the door at the back of the room and didn't reemerge. The guard unlocked all the handcuffs, returning them to the chain on his belt, and at gunpoint led the line of Cantaneys to the next building. This one looked like the nail salon that Gloria had visited before embarking on this new career path, except for the metal rod attached to the wall, of course. The guard attached the 3 Cantaneys with the swollen, bruised, and bloodied faces to the pole and led the other 2 to the nail station. He forced one to sit in the chair facing the cubicle and secured his hands to the table with wrist clamps that were bolted onto it. He kept the gun trained on the other one standing behind the chair. He pushed a button on the wall of the cubicle, and from a door in the back of the room emerged a small Oriental woman who took a seat facing the Cantaney and turned on a small desk lamp. She secured an N95 mask over her nose and mouth. Gloria noticed with alarm that the glass jar that should have held disinfectant solution was dry, and the tools within it were not nail scissors and cuticle pushers. Instead, the attendant took a flathead screwdriver and inserted it under the nail of the index finger on the Cantaney's right hand and began to pry. No effort was made to stop the Cantaney from screaming. It added to the terror of those watching, part of the persuasion. When a nail was ripped from each hand, the Cantaney in the chair was handcuffed to the pole, and the one kept at gunpoint assumed the chair. After all 5 had been persuaded, the guard told Gloria they were returning to the boat. Gloria said she would wait in the clearing for Dylan to return. Moments later, the other guard led his 5 Cantaneys to the clearing, with Dylan following behind. None of these looked battered or bruised. None were bleeding. Whatever happened with the other group must not have been that bad, she thought. Then she noticed their eyes. Some had expressions of horror on their faces. Some had dead, lifeless eyes. Both equally terrified Gloria. As the last of the Cantaneys were settled upon the pontoon, Gloria told AM that she and Dylan would remain on the island to observe the persuasion of the Cantaneys that FM would bring over. It could be 30 minutes before he arrives, she was informed. That's fine, Gloria said. AM shrugged and said, You're the boss. He stepped aboard the boat and took off, leaving Gloria and Dylan standing on the shore. When the boat was out of earshot, Gloria led Dylan to a nearby tree. They both sat on the ground, using the trunk as a backrest. Dylan had not said a word since they arrived at the clearing. Gloria was concerned. "Are you okay?" she asked. "No," he answered with a catch in his voice. "I'm not either," she said, reaching for and holding his hand. "Do you need to go back?" she asked. "No," Dylan said, shaking his head. "We need to know what's going on here so we can stop it." Gloria agreed. Her camera had witnessed everything she had. "When FM comes, you will go with the guard to the left, and I will go to the right and document the persuasion done there. Then we will witness the interrogation, and after that we will call it a day." Dylan nodded. He was glad Gloria hadn't asked about what he had witnessed. He didn't think he could talk about it. Still holding her hand, Dylan closed his eyes and tried to shut out the horrors of this island. Gloria shook the shoulder of Dylan, who had been dozing fitfully for the last 20 minutes. She had spent the time praying and listening to God. Now FM's pontoon was approaching the island. They docked, and the containees were split into two groups, Dylan joining those who would go down the path to the left, and Gloria would join those going to the right. Gloria watched, surprised, as FM joined her group. "FM, are you going with?" she asked. He nodded. "Isn't this above your pay grade?" He shrugged. "They let me come along. I like to watch." "Today you will stay on your boat," Gloria ordered. FM wanted to argue, but remembering what happened to Felicia, changed his mind. He kicked a toe in the dirt, showing his frustration, and walked back to the pontoon. Both groups took off down their respective paths. When the path to the right emptied into a clearing, Gloria noticed one building to the left, and to the right, 5 large piles of pine tree boughs, spaced several yards apart. The guard led the containees to the piles of boughs first. Stopping at the first pile, he ordered the first in line to strip, and the second in line to remove the boughs from the pile. Standing naked, covering his groin with his hands, the first containee in line was then pushed into a pit full of dirty water. He screamed as he fell and made a splash as he landed. He went completely underwater and emerged moments later, sputtering. The water was shoulder deep on him, Gloria noticed. It would be over the heads of some of the shorter containees. Suddenly, the man in the pit started screaming. "Snakes," the guard said to Gloria. Then he covered the pit with the boughs, leaving the man with the cold water and the snakes screaming in the darkness. One by one, the containees were pushed naked into the pits. When the boughs had been replaced on the last one, the guard had Gloria follow him to a tree that they rested against. He set an alarm on his phone. 20 minutes, he told her. The guard offered Gloria a set of earplugs so she wouldn't have to hear the screams that the pine boughs did little to muffle. She refused. He shrugged and inserted a pair in his own ears. His phone would vibrate when the 20 minutes were up. After a seeming eternity, the guard's phone buzzed and he retrieved a ladder that had been stashed behind some trees. He uncovered the pit that the first containee had been dropped into and lowered the ladder into it. The man eagerly grasped for the ladder and began climbing with shaky legs. Gloria noticed welts and puncture holes on the man's torso and legs. Snake bites, she realized. She wondered if any of the snakes were poisonous. The guard told the dripping man to put his clothes back on. He eagerly complied. The guard repeated the process for the remaining containees. When all were out of the pits, the guard marched the containees over to the building. It was a theater, Gloria realized, with seats sloping downward toward a screen. The 5 were individually handcuffed, then taken to the first row of seats and padlocked into them. Then the guard undid the padlock of one at a time, taking them to a small podium at the back of the room. From a shelf within the podium, he took some thin surgical strips of adhesive, the kind used to keep sutures shut, and attached them to the top and bottom lids of the containees' eyes, forcing them to stay open. Then returned them to the seats and snapped the padlock shut once more. Once all were settled again, the guard returned to the podium and pushed a button. The theater dimmed. With the push of another button, images began to appear on the screen. The movie had begun. "We can leave now," the guard told Gloria, motioning toward the door. "You don't stay?" she asked. "Are you kidding? This stuff will give you nightmares," he replied as he hurried out the door. Gloria sat in a chair in the back row. She didn't want to stay either, but her phone needed to see what the containees were being forced to watch, what they couldn't look away from if they tried. Horrible images filled the screen, one after another: brutal murders, mutilations, wounds filled with maggots, beheadings. All came upon the screen one after another, accompanied by the sounds of torture and death. The containees were immersed in this experience for approximately 25 minutes before the guard returned to lead the group back to the pontoon boat. Now Gloria understood the looks in the eyes of the group that had returned with Dylan earlier. No wonder Dylan wasn't all right and couldn't speak after witnessing such horrors. Snake bites had been hidden by clothing. How wrong she'd been to assume this group had it easier than those who'd visited the dentist and got their nails done. Before boarding the pontoon, Gloria asked the guard when and where the interrogations took place. He looked confused. "There are no interrogations," he replied. "The containees aren't questioned to see where their loyalties lie after they've been persuaded?" she asked. "Nope, we just take them back to the huts." Suddenly soul-weary, Gloria boarded the pontoon. Dylan and his group were already aboard. She just wanted to go back to the chalet, go to bed, and shut out the world. But she still had Felicia to deal with. Gloria and Dylan stayed on the boat while the containees were returned to their huts. The trip to the ferry shack made in silence. She would give orders for Felicia and the guard in holding to be fed and taken out to use the restroom, then return to the holding cell. She'd deal with them in the morning. She'd had all she could handle for one day. Before turning in that night, Gloria and Dylan sat in the front of the fire she'd started in the fireplace. She held his hand and prayed aloud. She asked God to give them wisdom how to handle all they had witnessed today. She asked for him to comfort the containees, especially those who had endured persuasion. No, it was torture. She would be honest with herself and God and call it like she saw it. Then she prayed a special blessing over Dylan and asked God to help them both sleep tonight, to remove the horrible things they'd seen this day from their minds. She fixed them each some chamomile and mint tea and encouraged Dylan to drink it. Then they each went to their rooms and tried to sleep. After showers and a good breakfast the next morning, Gloria felt better and Dylan seemed like himself again. Gloria breathed a sigh of relief. She had been really concerned for the well-being of her young assistant and friend. She assigned Dylan to go to the general store and spend the morning looking through the desk and filing cabinets. She told him to pull out anything he felt should be documented and stack it on the desk. While he did this, she needed to call the general and needed to decide what to do about the prisoners in the holding cell. Gloria initiated the conference call, and the general's face appeared on the screen. "Gloria, how are things going at Camp Savage?" "I've had some issues with some of the staff here," she began. The general looked irritated. "I told you I don't want to hear about staff issues. Deal with them as you see fit. Fire them, fine them, send them to Camp Mouse. I don't care. Surely you can handle staff issues, can't you?" "Of course, General," she replied. "I was simply answering your question, not complaining or asking for intervention." His face relaxed. He took a breath, then chuckled. "I'm sorry, my dear. My job can sometimes be a stressful one, as you may imagine. I didn't mean to take it out on you." "Nothing to apologize for, General," Gloria said. "So then, what is the reason for your call?" the general asked. "I witnessed the persuasion yesterday, but was surprised that the detainees were not taken from there to interrogation. How do you know if the persuasion was effective? How do you determine where they are to be sent from here?" "Gloria, Gloria," the general said, shaking his head, his tone that of one explaining something simple to a young child. "There is no interrogation. Detainees never leave Camp Savage. You can't trust anything a fence sitter tells you, regardless the amount of persuasion. I read somewhere that a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. That's scripture. Somewhere in James, if memory serves. I wonder if the general used to be a Christian," Gloria thought. "Sounds like something Confucius would say," Gloria replied. "If there's no interrogation, why the persuasion?" Gloria asked, genuinely confused. "Because we can," the general said, a hard look on his face. "Is there anything else?" Gloria shook her head and disconnected the call. For the first time since taking this position, Gloria was truly frightened by the general. Gloria's attention now turned to the issue of Felicia and the guard in the holding cell. What should she do about them? Release the guard, get him his own cabin, and promote him to your private detail, the spirit within Gloria said. Take Felicia to persuasion. Lord, had Gloria heard right? She has eyes but does not see, ears but does not hear. I shall guide you. Gloria walked over to the general store, and Dylan looked up from the paper he was reading as she opened the door. Almost done here, he said, pointing to the stack of papers on the desk, then putting the one he'd been reading back into the filing cabinet. Do you like to fish, Dylan? Gloria asked. Love it. I was thinking yesterday on the pontoon how nice the weather was for fishing. Why don't you take the afternoon off? Take the staff car over to Echo Lake and do some fishing. Really? He asked, eyes widening with excitement. Figure we could use some downtime after yesterday, she explained. He let out an excited little whoop. Echo Lake was a couple of miles away and was rumored to be a good spot for walleye. After Dylan left the compound, Gloria approached the holding cell. Both occupants looked surprised and grateful to see her. Gloria removed the cuffs of the guard and told him to follow her, then relocked the holding cell with Felicia still inside. She took the guard into the general store and had him sit at her desk. She moved the paper stacked upon it to the floor and sat across from him. "Do you know why I had you arrested?" she asked. He nodded. "Because I questioned your command." "You questioned my authority," she corrected. "I am the general when I am here. Do you understand?" "Yes, ma'am. It won't happen again." "What is your name?" Gloria asked. "Private Johansson, ma'am." "No, your name is Corporal Johansson. What do you do here?" "Anything I'm told, ma'am." "Yes, but now you do only what I tell you to do, because you will be assigned to be my personal guard while I am here. Do you understand?" "Yes, ma'am," the guard replied. "I will assign you a private cabin near mine, and you will need to use this phone that will be used for communicating only with me. You are to be at my disposal day and night." Corporal Johansson nodded his agreement as he reached for the phone and put it in his pocket. "Now, are you ready for your first assignment?" she asked. "Take Ms. Powell on the next F bus that comes by. Tell FM that you are taking her for persuasion. Tell FM that he and the persuaders must comply with your exact commands concerning Ms. Powell, or they will be taken to Camp Bouse. You will call me immediately if you are given any attitude, or if anyone refuses to comply with my demands. He is to take you and Felicia to the island alone before returning with the containees, and remain on the boat until you return. You will take Felicia down the left trail from the landing to the first building on the left. Felicia is to be strapped into the dentist chair and allowed to have her mouth clamped open. The dentist is to pick up the pliers, set them in her mouth, then return them to the tray and leave the room. You will then release her and take her to the other persuasion area, following the trail to the right from the landing. You will take her into the theater. Tape her eyes open with the surgical strips found in the podium and lock her into a seat in the front row. Turn the lights down and movie on using the buttons on the podium. After 5 minutes, shut off the movie, raise the lights, free her eyes, and remove her from the chair. Then the two of you may return to the boat and have FM return you to the ferry shack. From there, you and Ms. Powell will need to walk back to the outpost. You may take her to the bait and tackle and order yourselves something to eat, and allow her to use the restroom before locking her in to the holding cell once more. She must be in cuffs the entire time. You will need to go into the restroom with her. Any questions? None, ma'am. Very good. When you return, knock on my office door. I will be in the general store and will be eager to hear your report. Corporal Johansson nodded and said, "Thank you, ma'am. You can count on me." And he left to begin his task. Dylan walked into the lobby of the Echo Lake Recreational Building. A pretty black-haired woman with green eyes greeted him brightly as he entered. "Welcome, I'm Shirley. How can I help you?" "Hi, Shirley, I'm Dylan," he replied. "Can a guy rent some fishing equipment and buy bait around here?" he asked. "I hear your lake is good for walleye fishing, but I'm really in the area for work, so I don't have any gear." "It's illegal to come to Minnesota and not bring fishing gear," she joked. "But you're in luck. We can accommodate lawbreakers here." She walked him over to a little shop that had rods and reels, assorted bait and tackle, life vests, and other water sport equipment for sale or rent. "You can even rent a canoe to use if you want," Shirley said. Why not? Dylan thought. He had plenty of credits on his Freedom Card and rarely a need to spend them. A day on the water sounded perfect. Dylan was surprised to hear the still small voice in his spirit say, "Invite her to join you." "I could rent a two-seater and you could join me," Dylan said, thinking she'd be crazy to get into a boat with a complete stranger. Shirley cocked her head and looked at Dylan thoughtfully. There were no alarm bells going off in her spirit. Instead, she felt a gentle prodding. "You really could use a guide to the best fishing spots," she said. "I'll go, but I've got 2 hours max. I'll put a Be Back Soon sign on the door while you complete your purchases." "It's a date," he said, as she returned to the recreation office. Could this day get any better? Dylan thought happily. Gloria spent the next couple hours photographing the documents Dylan had pulled from the filing cabinet, returning them to the proper folders when she finished. She had just snapped the last pic when she heard a knock on the office door. She hastily returned the file to the cabinet, walked to the door, and unlocked it. She invited Corporal Johansson in and told him to have a seat. "How did everything go?" Gloria asked. "Did anyone give you any trouble?" FM started to say something, then looked at Felicia in the cuffs and changed his mind. "Everything went according to your wishes, ma'am," the corporal replied. "And Felicia, did she say anything to you?" "She asked where I was taking her and why. I didn't answer. I figured she'd find out soon enough." Gloria nodded. "And when she figured it out?" The corporal chuckled and shook his head. "She tried to bribe me to let her go. Dumb move. What could she offer me that could top anything from you? Besides, you could have had the same thing done to me. I owe you my loyalty at the very least." "And did her attitude change after the persuasion?" Gloria asked. "Well, she had a little accident in the dentist chair, and she didn't say a word after the movie. At the bait and tackle, she ordered a hot tea and said she didn't feel like eating. I had a cheeseburger. Hope that was okay." Gloria nodded. "You did well, Corporal. Let's go to the cabin rental office and get you a new place to live. Tomorrow, I will have new credentials for you to wear. After that, everyone will listen to you, as you will be representing me. If they don't, it will be at their own peril." Dylan returned just as it was getting dark. He found Gloria having dinner at the bait and tackle. "Look what I caught," Dylan said, leading a young woman to the table. Gloria looked at him questioningly and invited the two to sit. They ordered, and Dylan introduced Gloria and Shirley. When Shirley excused herself to wash up, Gloria asked Dylan what he was thinking, bringing a woman here. He knew this place was a secret, what they were doing here. "She's part of the plan," Dylan said, the spirit within Gloria bearing witness as he spoke. They all made small talk and enjoyed their meal. Then the three walked over to the general store, locked themselves in the office for a more necessary conversation. Much happened at Camp Savage over the next few weeks. Felicia, FM, the dentist, the nail tech, and some of the guards were all fired and banished from the property. They were threatened with Camp Bouse if any should return to the property or speak of anything that happened there. They all left convinced that these were not idle threats. They had a sense that they were lucky to escape with their lives. Shirley was hired in Felicia's place. The buildings on the small island were padlocked, and the staff were told that persuasion would be temporarily on hold while upgrades were being made. The upgrades would never be completed, and the staff would get used to a new routine that persuasion was not a part of. Anyone persisting to ask about it would be fired and banished or sent to Fort Bouse if they were deemed too problematic. A new ferrymaster was chosen to take FM's place to run incoming containees to the housing islands. The biggest change came during the last few days of Gloria and Dylan's tour at this camp. Dylan had requested a private meeting with Gloria. They sat in front of the fireplace in the chalet one evening, and Dylan shared what was on his heart. "I love being your assistant," he began, "but I feel like God has other plans for me." "What?" Gloria experienced a moment of panic. She had not only come to rely upon Dylan greatly, but she also loved him like a younger brother. She could not imagine completing her mission without him as her assistant. "Listen to him," the spirit within her said. "This is my will." Gloria swallowed the lump in her throat. "Go on," she encouraged. "I would like you to name me director of Camp Savage. I want to stay here and ensure that the torture never happens again. When the resistance comes, they will need someone who knows the place inside and out, how to get to the islands, someone with keys to all the Quonset huts. Shirley and I can help them when they arrive and help the containees until they do." Gloria's eyes filled even as she realized the wisdom of his words and the brilliance of the plan. "What would you need from me?" she asked. "New credentials, unlimited authority to hire and fire and handle staff issues. Your blessing?" Gloria nodded. "What will I do for an assistant?" she asked, reeling from the realization that this was really happening. "Promote Corporal Johansson. He couldn't really go back to being just a guard after being on your detail anyway. He's not any greener than I was when I first became your assistant." "Well, that's true," Gloria agreed with a chuckle, "and I believe he will be loyal." Dylan nodded. "I will call the general in the morning and get all the necessary documentation handled," Gloria said. "There's one more thing you need to do," Dylan said. Why does it feel as if our roles have suddenly switched? Gloria thought. "You need to back up your audio and video files to the cloud as soon as you are finished here at Camp Savage, and get the files to Trevor immediately. They need to know we are not in Savage, Minnesota. They will need to see the unique challenges that an island camp presents, so they will have time to plan for them before taking action. You will need to send your files to Trev after each camp now, instead of waiting to complete them all." Gloria saw the wisdom in that. She hugged Dylan and said, "I can't believe I'm going to leave you here. I'm going to miss you so much." "I'm going to miss you too, but we will see each other again when it's all over. I know it in my heart." When Gloria finally turned loose of Dylan, he shut off the fireplace and they went to bed. The general was surprised by the news Gloria shared on the conference call the next morning. You want your assistant to be named camp director and a guard to become your new assistant. Have I got that right? He asked. Yes, General. I won't bore you with my reasons for the changes. You entrusted me with staffing decisions, and I know this is the best course of action for Camp Savage. Very well, the general said. She's becoming the leader I'd always hoped she'd be, he thought, pleased. I will have new credentials for both Dylan and Corporal Johansson, overnighted to Duluth and brought to the general store on the first bus tomorrow. Thank you, General. You're welcome, Gloria. Remember to increase both men's Freedom Card credits commensurate with their new positions, and have them both go together in the staff car to Duluth to get proper attire and anything else they will need for their new responsibilities before you leave for Abilene and Camp Barkley. Will do, General. And Gloria? Yes, General? I'm proud of you, he said as he disconnected the call. Arizona. It had been 3 weeks since the new guillotines had arrived and executions had resumed. 630 faithful had gone to meet the one who died for them. Among them were Jack, Laura, the man who dreamed of being fed by the raven, and the man who dreamed that the guillotines were not instruments of death and torture, but were actually tickets home. These each stood and boldly professed their faith in Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior, and bravely knelt for him before the blade. When Laura was taken, Mark pushed his way to the front of the crowd, arriving directly in front of her as her neck was placed in the cradle. Their eyes locked onto each other, years of life together, all their good times and bad times, all the special memories spoken wordlessly in that unbroken gaze. Without losing eye contact, Mark lifted his hand and kissed the white spot on the third finger of his left hand, where his wedding ring had always been. Laura's eyes smiled. It was the last thing she ever saw. Her smiling eyes, full of love for her husband, would be the thing that Mark would remember when his eyes closed that night. When Jack was taken from Sonia's side, he reached out and held her hand before he was dragged away. This time, they both knew he would not be spared. And it was okay. He thought of his time here at Camp Bouse and at the processing center, and though they were the hardest, most horrible times he'd ever endured, they were also the best. He'd made friends, become part of a family he loved very much. He would see them again, and he would see Jesus. These were Jack's thoughts as the blade severed his head from his neck. The camp director would not put Jack's head on a spike around the latrine pits. He could not. It was wearing a smile. Across the nation. Trevor had just received the next video file and several audio files from Gloria. There was a lot to go through and process. It would take some time, but she also had shared vital information with Trevor, information that could not wait to be relayed until the next video clip was ready. He picked up his phone. It was time to order more coffee. Sam had finished updating the database. It was now arranged by section instead of alphabetically by state, and had the name of the resistor who had volunteered to coordinate activity for each section. He scrolled through it now, pleased with the results. Section 1, Washington, D.C., Judge Thurston Moran, living in Washington, D.C. Beneath this was a subheading for Connecticut, with all its names and addresses, followed by one each for Delaware, Long Island, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New York City, Vermont, Virginia. Section 2. Fort Hays, Columbus, Ohio. Janet Webster, residing in Grove City, Ohio. Beneath this was a subheading for Michigan Lower Peninsula, with all its names and addresses, followed by one each for Ohio, Pennsylvania, Upstate New York, West Virginia. Section 3. Fort Benjamin Harrison, Indianapolis, Indiana. Jeb Bingham, residing in Indianapolis, Indiana. Beneath this was a subheading for Illinois, with all its names and addresses, followed by one each for Indiana, Kentucky, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee. Section 4. Oklahoma FEMA Processing Center, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Trenton Childress and Stuart Haynes, residing in Wichita, Kansas. Beneath this was a subheading for Iowa, with all its names and addresses, followed by one each for Kansas, Missouri, Nebraska, Oklahoma, Wyoming. Section 5. Camp Barkley, Abilene, Texas. Pastor Gerald Whitfield, residing in Sweetwater, Texas. Beneath this was a subheading for Alabama, with all of its names and addresses, followed by one each for Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Louisiana, Mississippi, Texas. Section 6. Camp Bouse, Bouse, Arizona. Samuel Adamson, residing in Buckeye, Arizona. Beneath this was a subheading for Arizona, with all its names and addresses, followed by one each for California, Colorado, Nevada, New Mexico, Utah. Section 7. Fort Savage, Savage, Minnesota. Marcy Tompkins, Duluth, Minnesota. Beneath this was a subheading for Idaho, with all its names and addresses, followed by one each for Michigan Upper Peninsula, Minnesota, Montana, North Dakota, Oregon, South Dakota, Washington State. Sam had received offers from 2 volunteers for Section 7, Marcy from Duluth, and a man named Chester from Eden Prairie, Minnesota, just 12 miles from Savage, Minnesota. He had chosen Chester for obvious reasons when the Spirit spoke to him and said, "I have chosen Marcy." He Googled Duluth and found it was over 3 hours away from the location of the camp. How could Marcy be effective from that far away? My ways are not your ways. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge me, and I will direct your paths. Sam knew the voice of the Spirit well enough to hear and obey. He would acknowledge him. He made Marcy Tompkins from Duluth, Minnesota, the coordinator of Section 7. Washington, D.C. From his spot before the computer screen in the secret room, Christian felt a vibration in his left front pants pocket. He removed the phone and answered, "Heavenly Coffee, thank you for responding to our ad for a free sample of our new coffee. May I get your name and address, please?" A man's voice said, "Listen carefully. Another video clip is coming shortly. They will be coming more rapidly now. Our operative only has 6 more weeks in the field. We must move at the end of the 6 weeks if there is any hope of this plan working. Coordinate your attack on each facility for 5 a.m. Washington, D.C. time on Sunday, July 4th, 2034. Then the line went dead. Did that just happen? Christian had jotted the date and time on a nearby bar napkin as the caller spoke. He looked at it now. He felt excitement building within him. In 6 weeks, the Christians and patriots who were taken would all be freed. The excitement was quickly replaced by dread as he thought, we don't even have intel on any of the camps yet. 6 weeks is not much time to get everything arranged that will need to be arranged. Doubt tried to assail Christian's mind. Was this lunacy? Was such a huge-scale operation even feasible to try? What if, before fear could take over, the Spirit spoke to Christian? Peace, be still. You can do all things through Christ who strengthens you. I am with you, even to the ends of the earth. Christian allowed the peace that passes all understanding to guard his heart and mind in Christ Jesus. He did some quick calculations. If it's 5 a.m. in Washington, D.C. in July, it would be 5 o'clock in Ohio and Indiana, 4 o'clock in Minnesota, Oklahoma, and Texas, and 2 o'clock in the morning in Arizona. He composed a new message for the plan page. Brothers and sisters, patriots, details of the plan will be coming rapidly now. Watch the site daily. We have a timeline. We will attack all locations simultaneously on Sunday, the Lord's Day, July 4th, Independence Day, 2034 at 5 a.m. in D.C., Indiana, and Ohio, 4 a.m. in Minnesota, Oklahoma, and Texas, and 2 a.m. in Arizona. Get with your section coordinators to make sure vehicles and weapons are readily available for arrival at the camps 30 minutes prior to these times. Each individual must make their own travel arrangements and accurately plan their travel times. Each person will need to purchase and bring a battery-operated headlamp. We can do this. God is with us and for us and goes ahead of us. Start making arrangements now. God bless you, and God bless this United States of America. Christian posted the message on the plan page and waited anxiously for the next video clip to arrive. And that concludes part 17 of Without Faith. Ooh, it's getting good now. It's really going to happen. But you gotta stay tuned to find out exactly how it's going to happen. Are you enjoying Without Faith? As terrifying as the thought of something like this happening can be, it's a good read, isn't it? Well, I know you're going to want to share it with your friends and family, so please do. Have them start at the beginning and tell them, yes, it takes a long time to hear the whole thing, but it's worth it. They can take it as quickly or as slowly as they like. Don't forget to like the video and to subscribe to the channel, and in this way, you will be helping to spread the word. Thank you. God bless.